Welcome everyone to Already Cancelled. I am Peter, that is Connor, and we are going to talk about Star Trek The Next Generation, Season 4, Episode 24. It's called The Mind's Eye. So full spoilers for the episode as always. This episode is a bit of a Manchurian Candidate style plot, with Geordi being abducted by Romulans and brainwashed into a plot to try and sever the alliance between the Klingons and the Federation by way of sabotage and ultimately assassination. That sounds quite epic when you say it like that. It is, that's not to say that it isn't in the episode. I'm just saying that when you actually lay it out like that, it sounds ridiculously.
I would say it's a good episode.
Yes,
don't get me wrong. That did oversell it a little bit.
That's maybe the real complaint with the episode, which is like it is a good episode. But it almost feels like it could have done with a full 2-hour movie of runtime to do everything it was doing.
Right. There are points where, because obviously Geordi is unaware of what he's doing because he's brainwashed, and he's like trying to, on behalf of the captain, investigating what's happened, and he's like chasing down his own trail, but it doesn't quite get to do enough with it because it doesn't have the time to really devote to that stuff, and it's so close to being amazing. Yeah. So it's a really good conceptual episode. It's a pretty fun episode to watch. There's a couple of good sequences of tension where Geordi's like almost about to assassinate someone, and it's just as Data's figuring everything out and stops him in time. Some really good direction, including one moment which I've definitely seen gift a lot. There's some nice direction in this episode for sure. Particularly Geordi walking slowly towards the group of people talking where he's about to assassinate someone, I thought was very well handled and got me really into the episode, because the episode opens with Geordi just on a shuttle. He's away for like a seminar or something on some planet, and he's just sitting talking to the computer, asking for music and games, and he's like, "Oh, this question's dead easy that you've asked me," and the computer's like, "In alphabetical order." He's like, oh shit," and his time runs out. But then Romulan shows up and he's taken. And that's maybe the thing as well. This is one of these things that maybe would have benefited from 2 episodes. Like, imagine we got a whole episode of Geordi like being held captive by the Romulans, preparing him for the episode where, because ultimately he's back in the Enterprise by about the 15-minute mark of this episode, ready to come back to work. And the crisis with the Klingons is already kind of underway, so the timeline's a bit weird. I feel like we could have had some more time on that, and it really speeds through the whole Clockwork Orange elements of Geordi's imprisonment, and it starts playing with things because this will work with him because of his visor and his implants already. It lets us play with things a lot easier, and it's like there's so much potential here, and it's still good, but this has potential to be amazing. And
that's the important thing, is Geordi's the target because his visor is something they can beam messages to or transmissions to, so because of that he's the candidate for this sabotage, if you want to call it that. And there's some twists and turns. The Klingon sort of ambassador or whoever he is who's on board the Enterprise, who's quite reasonable and decent and speaks with Picard and has a moment with Worf over, because Worf is seen as lacking respect in the Klingons right now. He has no honor.
Dishonorable.
Yeah. He turns out to be the true villain who's actually working with the Romulans. So that's a bit of a twist, like 2/3 in.
It doesn't really get to why. There's no real motivation for it. It's just because we needed someone.
Yeah, I mean, I can maybe surmise that maybe he's like a devout Klingon who believes that we shouldn't be allied with the Federation, that he wants the Klingons to be back on their own, but it never says any of that in the episode. This is all things we are imposing upon it. It's just guesswork, because the main Klingon, the other main Klingon, because the plot with the Klingons is that this Klingon base believes that their colony is under attack by these rebels, and they believe the rebels are being aided by the Federation. They have Federation weapons, supplies, medical stuff, all that. Again,
like, there's all these elements here of, we could play with this, the parallel of, like, the US government, providing arms to certain rebel cells in various areas, like, which is something the show has touched on here or there, but it's like, okay, you're presenting this idea and you just don't give it the time that it needs in this episode.
Yeah, you've got that, but he's a lot more confrontational and is convinced the Federation are behind this, and Picard is constantly trying to assure him, no, like, we're going to look into this. Even because once they do eventually see evidence that, wait, our ship did beam something down to the rebels. And they start looking into it, and that's obviously Geordi covering his, or investigating his own crimes, but he doesn't know he's investigating his own crimes, because he's like, wait, only 4 of us on the ship could have probably rewired all this and done all this circuitry. And he lists who it could be, and it's like him, O'Brien, and Data, and one other random name.
I want to say Costa was his name.
It was like one other random name. And they all have alibis but him, but none of them suspect him because it's Geordi. Which is
why he theoretically makes such a good candidate for this, right?
Yeah. I mean, that part makes complete sense. I did enjoy, though, early on when they're being accused and Picard's talking to this Klingon governor who's down the planet, who has been a bit more hostile, who is accusing them of everything, but a bit more traditional Klingon, I guess. Which is, I guess, why the twist that it's actually the more pleasant one that works. He was being deceitful the entire time. He's the one actually giving Geordi his orders on the ship. But he at one point gets really confrontational with Picard, and Picard drops the facade, leans in, and we don't get a translation, but we do get told that he's swearing in Klingon, and he just swears at this Klingon governor in his own language. And it feels really intense, and I'm like, whoa.
and the guy's like, oh, you swear pretty well. And there's like a bit of respect there for it.
Yeah. And it's part of this, like, is Picard losing his cool, and that's a cool moment potentially if it is him losing his cool, because Picard so rarely does that. Or is this Picard being so good at what he does that he knows the way to gain this guy's respect, and further this conversation is to show him some strength?
I suspect that one. I do suspect he knows what he's doing, but there's always the possibility that maybe not.
He leans in very intently. I don't know, it does come off very thingy, but they pump Geordi with fake memories of what happened for those like 2 or 3 days that he was gone. And this is where the timeline's a bit wonky, because everything that's happening with this Klingon crisis seems to be happening at the same time as he was kidnapped. And it feels like the Romulans really had to get this brainwashing done quick to get him back on board before all this.
Yeah, it does a bit, yeah.
Because they act like he's been gone for days, because, you know, one of the memories that's fake is that he met a girl, and Troy's like, oh, you seem really happy. Like, was
Troy
there someone?
Is such a gossipy bitch.
Yeah. And she's like upset when he won't spill the beans. And there's little hints, you know, he goes to crush her at one point, and she's like, oh, there's a weird anomaly in your visor, but we'll just check that out next time we're at a base. Nothing serious.
She's like, just get it checked out. It's probably nothing, but, you know, here's some sleeping pills, basically. Because
that basically boils down to what Data's doing for most of the episode, is that he's noticing this weird, like, signal that's, you know, went through the ship. And he's trying to, like, figure out what it's doing, where it's coming from, where it's going. And essentially, he plays Sherlock Holmes, not literally like he has done in the past, but he plays Sherlock Holmes in that he pieces everything together and looks at the shuttle that Geordi was on to see if it's been tampered with. He's the one who basically calls Worf and says, look, arrest Geordi right now. Do it right now. And this is when Geordi's walking towards the group.
I actually realised this moment, because Worf's like, are you serious? Like, really? And Dave's like, do it right now.
Yeah.
And Worf does, you know, I think he actually, you know, he says that's an order, and Worf's like, all right then.
Yeah, and Worf, of course, because he has to go through the little Klingon party, because it's the Klingon governor that Geordi's going to assassinate. They think he's like causing a scene, and they start grabbing him, and he's like yelling, and it's actually, he just yells Geordi in enough time that Picard turns around and is able to deflect the phaser blast.
Pulls his arm up as he's shooting. Yeah.
And Data walks in and explains everything he can very quickly, just so that it's not, because the ambassador Klingon, he's like trying to like keep this going, that he was clearly acting on his own. This is the Federation, the Alliance is falling apart, and it's obviously he comes in because the ambassador says. He refuses to be searched because Worf or Data says, oh, both parties, the only 2 people who have been around every single time Geordi's had an order are Picard and this Klingon ambassador. And he says, so we'll have to search both of you to see if you have like an emitter of some kind that would be transferring these signals. And the ambassador refuses to be searched. And the Klingon governor says, you know, I actually agree. It is actually dishonorable for you to be searched by Starfleet, which is why we'll take you down to the planet and search yourselves. And immediately the ambassador's like, Picard, I'd like to seek asylum, please. Asylum, asylum.
It's kind Picard's just like, as soon as you're cleared of this crime, you will be glad to take you.
Yeah. So that's the other thing of it being so much squeezed into the episode, is the ending like, we have to kind of almost gloss over that no one, because I would expect some people to kind of like have to accept that Geordi wasn't doing this of his own free will, but it's kind of just taking it as granted because the episode doesn't have time to do anything else with it.
There's no lingering effect of people looking at him weird, like, hey dude, you just tried to assassinate that guy.
Yeah, and obviously
there's none of that.
I don't necessarily want it to be something that's drawn out forever or anything, but it does feel a little bit quick and neat just how much it's wrapped up.
5 or 10 minutes would have been nice.
Yeah, and likewise, just as you said, we never get a motivation from the Klingon ambassador for why he's helping the Romulans. We just theorize our own things as to why. Which,
I mean, it says a lot how good this episode actually is, that it is still very enjoyable despite all these things that we're throwing at it, which, you know, in what could have been a good episode would become, you know, very mediocre with these problems. The fact that it's still as good as it is, you know, quite a testament to it.
Yeah, there's a lot of good sequences of, you know, diplomacy from Picard, not up to his best stuff, of course, but there's some good moments of that. You know, Data doing his thing and sort of problem solving out what the sequence of events have been when no one else. And there's a couple of other fun scenes. You know, one of the brainwashing scenes is they're trying to convince Geordi to kill O'Brien, and it's not real; it's just in his head. This is when they've got him Clockwork Orange style. Yeah. And they force him to kill O'Brien, and then the other like characters in the virtual simulation don't even react to it. They just sort of like are still nice to him, and he's
like, "Can I join you for a drink?" They're like, "Yeah, sit down."
But it's almost this is the test to see if it's worked, because then when he's back in the Enterprise, they have him intentionally spill a drink in O'Brien, and it's kind of the same. It's like, okay, this is to make sure it worked, and then from here we'll continue with our plan. And O'Brien is very understanding. He's you know, it happens, sir. Let's go change.
So, don't worry about it. Yeah,
it's fine. And
I buy it. That sort of thing does happen in a bar.
Oh yeah, sure. He's not. This is a far cry from the episode where they're all getting really angry.
They were all the big massive brawl.
Yeah, because Troy, or was it Troy's mother, whose like emotions were starting to like ripple like out through the ship, and everyone was on high on a tightrope.
Yeah,
emotionally speaking. So yeah, I think those sequences are fun. If nothing else.
There's the moment where it's before Geordi gets to the group at the end where he's assassinating him, but he's walking down the corridor and he's looking dead at the camera, and the camera's, you know, pulling back with him. That's a moment where I've seen like in GIFs before, but it's still quite effective. You know, just feeling really uncomfortable, and you know, this is so weird and out of character for Geordi, which obviously is the point. He's brainwashed, but it's really well handled.
It's funny how quickly the fact that we can't see his eyes help him feel robotic and help him feel like he's walking without a soul. Because
he's not smiling.
Yeah,
that's all it is.
Immediately it feels a little bit just a little bit alien, a little bit like he's scary all of a sudden, and you know, he is scary in the scene because he's
supposed to be. Yeah,
and you know, the idea being it's not just about the death of this one Klingon; it's the idea that this will completely break apart the Alliance, and then the Romulans will have a field day.
As they say multiple times, this might start a war.
Yeah, so you know, I do like the ongoing threat of the Romulans throughout the show, and it's this for a show that's not very serialized. It's a very long game thing because they were reintroduced into the show in the season 1 finale, and we're here towards the end of season 4, and we're still sort of playing out that they're still trying to tamper and become a player again in the ongoing civilization of the galaxy. So. That stuff's really cool. It feels like a really cool, solidly fun, tense episode that fits really well within the mythology of the show and what's going on throughout the whole thing. It's just a little bit overstuffed to really be as great as it could be.
I agree, yeah. I just want to say, I really agree with what you said about that Romulan stuff there, and it makes it feel real in the way that a lot of TV doesn't. Because, I mean, if you look at like a lot of historical events, we boil them, you know, for things from like 1,000 years ago or whatever, we boil them down into a couple of paragraphs. But these are things that took place over decades. But because we have all this hindsight and we can boil down, these are the key events, it feels like, it feels very condensed. But in reality, it takes place over time. So seeing this stuff with the Romulans actually take place over time at a very realistic pace feels kind of refreshing in a way that we don't see in a lot of storytelling.
Yeah, it just so happens that last month I watched The Manchurian Candidate for the first time, so and this is
very fresh for you.
Yeah, and this is definitely just this show's version of that movie, because it's the premise.
I mean, it wouldn't be the first time this show has taken.
Oh, for sure, yeah.
Let's do this movie.
with not quite as dark as an ending, which is because I don't think that movie's amazing. I think it's got a good concept, and the start and the end are really good, but it kind of plods a bit in the middle. But the last scene, the last like 5-10 minutes of that movie are really well done, but they're really well done in a really dark way. Obviously, for the sake of the show continuing the show, yes. Obviously the ending's a bit more, the day is saved, kind of thing. But yeah, there's other things like, they discover like about halfway through the episode it's actually Geordi himself who proves that the Federation weapons that the Klingons have found down with the rebels are actually replicas, and the tell is that the energy source, like, okay, the Romulans could replicate the weapons perfectly, but they still had to power it with Romulan power sources, and that was the tell sign that
they did it. They powered it too well.
Yes,
it was too efficient. They were like, we wouldn't make tech that good.
So that's it's one of those little key details along the way that I enjoyed.
And I do like, for as happy an ending as it ultimately is, which it is. The day gets saved.
Yeah, it does end in a pretty down note.
Yeah, Geordi just being completely lost, that these memories that he's convinced he has of this trip to this planet are just not real at all, and the fact that it might take him years to truly uncover the real memories and get back what now feels like a missing part of himself.
Yeah, it ends in a therapy section with Troy, who's asking him questions, and he actually catches himself just naturally saying the Romulan ship showed up, and that was something he wasn't supposed to remember, and it kind of gives him this moment for pause. And so as much as it maybe doesn't dwell on do other people need to accept that he's been brainwashed, whether or not they can trust him or not, it does at least give us this really sort of sad, bitter moment at the end, because it just goes to the credits and this moment of him just being kind of lost, like, when will I get these memories back? When can I trust myself again? And maybe that's the thing that should linger on more. That's more important, is the idea of him trusting himself rather than anyone else trusting him. So maybe that's something they can revisit down the line, maybe an episode focusing on him where he does have the residual effects of someone taking control of him.
It's the sort of thing I would love, in the same way that we've had Picard's run-in with the Borg referenced here or there, like it was brought up in that trial episode a couple episodes ago. This is the sort of thing where I'd like to see him doubt himself at some point in a confrontation with the Romulans in the future, and it's just is this really me making that choice sort of moment. It doesn't have to be a big thing, but just something like that would be really nice to see.
Yeah. So it's a good episode, a lot of great stuff in it. Maybe just a little bit over ambitious perhaps with the amount of stuff it tried to pack in.
I think another 20 minutes and this would probably be fantastic. Yeah.
So that is the Mind's Eye. Let's look ahead to what the next episode is. The penultimate episode of the season, that is, because next episode is 25.
That's how it works. Yeah.
26. So it's called In Theory. The description here on IMDb: when a female crew member is infatuated with Lieutenant Commander Data. I was expecting Riker there, so they swear.
I mean, if it was that, why would it be a whole episode?
Yeah, true. With Lieutenant Commander Data, he decides to give a romantic relationship a try. Oh dear. Also, the Enterprise finds itself having to maneuver through a dangerous nebula. Okay, some fun.
This is either going to be wonderfully amusing or not that great.
Some fun Data shenanigans. I have faith. I have faith in them to pull this off. So that's next time on Next Gen. So do let us know what you thought of this episode in the comments below. Please do like and subscribe. All those things on YouTube really do help with the algorithm and finding more of an audience, so please do hit those like buttons and comment sections and whatnot. You can also support us on patreon.com/MailFuzzTV for as little as $1 per month and get some bonuses for your trouble and keep all the content coming. You can also catch us on the Twitters at @mailed_fuzz for channel updates, but otherwise that is us. So thank you once again for watching or listening. We always appreciate it. Keep watching Star Trek, and somewhere out there Wesley Crusher is being controlled by a Romulan.